The biblical witness today is from Genesis 38. It's like all of Genesis 38, but I'm not going to read all of Genesis 38 because it's long. But I want you, if you have the time, to read all of Genesis 38. I will paraphrase. I will read some of it, but I will paraphrase it. Judah was one of our ancestors in the faith, not just a land. The land is named after the man, Judah. And he took a wife for his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. But he was wicked in the sight of God, and so God killed him. Then Judah said to Onan, "Go into your brother's wife and perform the duty of a brother," because in those times, if a husband died and the wife did not bear a child, then she would just keep being passed from one brother to another until she had a kid, because they wanted to have a child in that family's name. And that was considered an honor to her, a very big cultural difference than what we experience today. The problem was that Onan did what was displeasing in the sight of God when he would go into Tamar, and he wouldn't finish his duty, so to speak. So, God killed him. And Judah said to his daughter-in-law Tamar, "Remain a widow in your father's house until Shelah grows up," for he feared that he too would die like his brother. So Tamar went to live in her father's house, and in the course of time, the wife of Judah, Shua's daughter, died. When Judah's time of mourning was over, he went into town. And Tamar was told, "Your father-in-law is going into town to shear his sheep." She put off her widow's garments, put on a veil, wrapped herself up, and sat down at the entrance of the town. Now, when Tamar was told that he was going into town to shear his sheep, he probably was not literally going into town to shear his sheep. And so Tamar went into town and covered her face and posed as a prostitute. And when Judah came up to her, he said, "Come, let me come into you, he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law, because she had the veil on her face." And she said, "Well, what will you give me?" He said, "I'll give you a kid from my flock." And she said, "Well, only if you give me a pledge. Until you send it, I want your signet, your cord, and the staff that is in your hand." So Judah said, "Okay," and gave her those things, and they got together, and she got pregnant by him. And then she got up and went away, taking off her veil. And she put back on the garments of her widowhood. When Judah sent the kid by a friend of his to recover the pledge, the friend went all around town and they said, "There's no prostitute like that here. We don't know what you're talking about." So the friend went back to Judah and said, "We don't know where she is. We don't know where she came from. They claim that there's nobody in town like that." And he said, "Okay, well, let her keep that stuff. You and I know that I have tried to pay my debt, so we will not have shame on our house." About 3 months later, Judah was told, "Your daughter-in-law Tamar is pregnant." She played the whore. And Judah said, "Bring her out to me and let her be burned." As she was being brought out, she sent word to her father-in-law, "It was the owner of these who made me pregnant. Take note, please, whose these are, the signet, the cord, and the staff." Then Judah acknowledged them and said, "She is more right than I am, since I did not give her to my son, Shelah, and he did not lie with her again." When the time of her delivery came, there were twins in her womb while she was in labor. One put a hand out, and the midwife took it and put a red cord around it, and then the hand went back in, but the other one came out first. That happens a few times in the Bible. Therefore, he was called Perez. Afterward, his brother came out with a crimson thread on his hand, and he was named Zerah. Why do I tell you this story on the first Sunday of Advent? Because Tamar is in the lineage of Jesus. You know, in Matthew and in Luke, when it says, and this is where Jesus came from, Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, and then all those names that we go, blah, 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 blah. Thank you for admitting you do that. Well, Tamar is in there. And I've heard some preachers say the questionable women in Jesus' lineage. But she's not questionable. As a matter of fact, her father-in-law, Judah, said, she is more right than I am. I did not give her the opportunity to bear a child in my family's name. I was wrong not to do that. Being a prostitute back then wasn't nearly as big of a deal unless you were owned by somebody else, and she was owned by him. So actually what she did was just have a ruse so that she could do her duty and be fulfilled in her calling as a woman of that time. How many women want to go back to that time? How many men want to go back to that time? No. But that's the way that was. So why in the world would they name Tamar in the lineage of Jesus? All of the fantastic, heroic type people that they might have chosen in those Gospels, and yet they include Tamar as a hero so that you could say, this is the lineage Jesus comes from. Look at this royal line. Look at this impressive line of people that Jesus came from. Tamar, the woman who got pregnant by her father-in-law by posing to be a prostitute. I think Tamar is one of the strongest people in the Bible. She took a huge risk. She didn't settle for anything less. She gave to Jesus his tenacity, his unwillingness to settle for anything less than what he was called to be. It was from Tamar that he got some of his strength and some of his high ideals of what life should be like and about the kind of risks he needed to take. It was from Tamar, the hero Tamar. And so what do we do when we see people that we think to ourselves, seriously? Those are the choices that you made? Because we do that with people all the time, and she is one that we would look back and say, seriously? What were you thinking? Do we have any idea what people are really going through and why they make the choices that they do? Do we have any idea what details are weaving around in their lives that make them say, this is the end result that I have to have, and I'm going to do it in as honorable of a way as I possibly can? And you say, that's honorable? Well, according to Judah, she is more right than me. And there's not often a time in the Bible where a man says about a woman, she is more right than me. And so as we think about hope, as we think about how we view Jesus himself, this baby that's not quite here yet, you'll see we've got a shepherd and a couple sheep and an empty
Cradle. Manger.
Fresh cradle. Basket thingy.
Manger.
What?
Manger.
Manger. Well, the manger, the cradle is, yeah. As we think about this event that we celebrate ritually every single year, and we think about the hope that comes with it, think about the hope of Tamar. The hope that Tamar had, not the wish, but the hope, the substantial confidence that I am going to get a child from this family line. And I'm going to do what I need to do to get it. And God blessed her, and Judah blessed her. Think about the lineage of Jesus Christ. Think about your own lineage. Skeletons, maybe. I don't know about you, but some of my skeletons in my family lineage have the strongest bones than some of the others. They're the ones that I turn to and go, wow, you know what? I get it. I see what you were going for there. Might have made a different choice, might not have, because I wasn't in your shoes. So let us have the hope of Tamar. And let us see other people with Judah's eyes as we begin this Advent season.